So we know mindset-wise, you need Jardi Kala. Yeah. But I want to get a bit more technical. What gave them the edge? What gave them that ability to do what they did? Because there were so few of them. So in your book, I saw it said guerrilla warfare. So could you talk to me a little bit about that? What is the techniques? Because the numbers are unbelievable, how outnumbered we were. How were we able to achieve such great feats?
I think there's two parts of this question here. One is, how are you emboldened? What are the tools you have to be such great warriors? I think Guru Gobind Singh did that. He gave every Sikh the tools to become generals, basically. Effectively, he made every one person. And that's why Sikhs, the Khalsa is seen as Sawa Lakh. One Sikh is equal to 125,000 people. Yeah? That's the kind of concept which the Guru had laid for the Khalsa. So what that means is, if you've got that running through your veins and you're practicing the scriptures, you're reading from Guru Granth Sahib, and in the battlefield, you're reading the compositions of Dasan Granth and you're going into warfare, you've got that edge already because you're reading the Guru's mantra, you're reading the concepts which give you that edge. So having those besides you as one part. The second is, like you said, strategy. And there was a strategy which the Sikhs used, like you said, because they were low in numbers. You can call it guerrilla warfare, but there's an actual term for it. It's called Dai Bat. Okay, it's called 2.5 strikes. Okay?
Yes, I remember that from the book. Yes.
Okay, so 2.5 strikes. It's like saying you hit them once and then you retreat. You hit them again and you retreat. And then it's on the retreat that you go back and then you actually finish off the force. Because what's happening is you're splitting off an army, because you're kind of hitting them and only a quarter of the army or half the army is chasing you. Okay, so you melt away and then you go back and then there's only less people that you're kind of picking off, and it's like you melt away again, and then you're left with only a number of soldiers who are your enemy, and you quite effectively be able to actually take them down.
Wow.
And that is the strategy which the Sikhs used, and they used it quite confidently in the Vada Gurudwara as well, when they were being kind of surrounded from all sides. But they did it with a lot of armies. It wasn't just against the Afghans, it wasn't just against the Mughals, it was against the Rohillas as well, a group we don't hear much about. The Rohillas were a prominent 18th century group, for instance, and therefore this is different because the Sikhs were generally cavalry, so Korswa, if we call it. So they were basically cavalry, and it was just their kind of the Atiyar they had, whether it was the Qatars, it was the Talwars, for instance, and so forth. They didn't have much in terms of cannons, if that makes sense. So the Torps were very limited at the time in the 18th century. We had so much more under Ranjit Singh's period, which is different because of technology and the method of warfare changed. But in the 18th century, it was all about strategy. It was all about the few. It was all about cunning plans, so to speak, in order to actually subdue the enemy. And we did it because, you've got to remember, Ahmed Shah Abdali's forces had created and annihilated the Sikhs for a long period of time. And therefore, when they were able to have battles on a more equal basis, they were able to show their strength against the Afghans as well. So it shows the kind of transition as well into how the Sikhs became more and more effective and emboldened as well.
How much of a role did diplomacy play?
So diplomacy is very interesting because when we talk about, say, the 18th century, again, we talk about warfare and the battlefield. That's what all people see. They do not see the fact that Ahmed Shah Abdali was writing letters to 𝐿 Singh, Kalon, who was actually effectively the ruler of Lahore. So before we have Maharaja Ranjit Singh, effectively the king of Lahore, we had somebody called 𝐿 Singh, Pungi. So he's from the Pungi Misl, and he rules Lahore for around about 32 years. And effectively, Ahmed Shah Abdali is writing letters to him and saying, well, you are the ruler of Lahore, but you have to bow down to me, and therefore I will give you patronage. And 𝐿 Singh's replying back to him and saying, we don't bow down to anybody, with the Khalsa. So you've got that kind of strategy going on as well. But then the actual diplomacy in Delhi is taking place during that period. We have the vakils, which I alluded to, and so therefore the Sikhs can negotiate things. You're not just having battles, you're also battling people, but you're also negotiating treaties with everybody as well. So the Sikhs had treaties with the Jaipur state. We had treaties with the East, well, not with the Eastern. We had treaties with the Marathas, for instance, even though they were short-lived. There were some treaties with the Mughal Empire as well. So when Delhi is conquered in 1783, Baghel Singh signs documents to the effect that he can actually have taxation rights, but he also is given land as well. So people don't really understand that when the Gurdwara were built in Delhi, there was land attached to them as well. So a jagir was given by Emperor Shah Alam to the Khalsa. And these are the nuances which are forgotten. And it's always about the warfare, but not about the strategy, and also about the kind of diplomatic links that the Sikhs used to have.
The thing is, I understood that there was some form of communication back and forth. Like, this is such a naive way to think, but when you think of what happens in warfare, they probably only ever spoke to the enemy on the battlefield. That's if they're speaking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't really think there's any, channel of communication until I came across the Zafarnama. And then when I found that, I was like, wow, Guru Gobind Singh is actually, he wrote a letter. Was that to 𝐿𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐸?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so that is huge as well. And I didn't even realize that all these missile leaders are also, they're negotiating, they're sending, I would have guessed, also threats. They're letting each other know, don't do this.
It's diplomacy, but also making their position very clear as well. I think that's very, very important. In diplomacy, there's certain things in between. You read through the lines, basically, as to what you're trying to say. But you're quite right. This idea of Sikhs being people of letters has been forgotten.
Yeah.
Okay? Sikhs who were actually padhe likhe. Yeah. And this all goes back to Guru Gobind Singh. So another fact which people forget is that Guru Gobind Singh used to pay his lakari, his scribes, more than he used to pay his warriors.
Wow.
And why is that? Because he wanted education to be a very key theme of how he wanted the whole Khalsa to become, basically. And we've forgotten that. So therefore, the lakaris wrote about different warfare, different strategies, different concepts. That's why we just don't have the Sikh scriptures. We have translations of Hindu, Muslim texts, all being written in the court of Guru Gobind Singh, in the darbar, basically. And these Kavi darbars meant that these verses would be actually openly sung and actually spoken about and actually kind of debated effectively as well in the Guru's court at Anandpur Sahib. So therefore, we have this kind of great kind of khajana, which has kind of been forgotten. But the missile leaders still took it on board that they had to be padhe likhe, they had to be individuals or people who were able to negotiate. You just couldn't be ahead of a missile because you had people underneath you.
Yeah.
So, and this actually improved. We had a great system of education during the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh as well. And then it started dwindling, I would say, throughout the decades.
So we got the mindset, which is Chardi Kala. We got the technique, which is the, what's it called?
Die part,
yeah. So we got the techniques, we got the diplomacy. So someone that embodies all of those things, someone that took that, aside from Guru Gobind Singh Ji, obviously all the rest did as well, but someone that really took it to the furthest point they could was Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Would you say that's a fair comment?
I would say it's a fair comment, but we've missed another leader before that.
Oh, have we?
And I definitely want to speak on Jassa Singh Ahluwalia. And so who was Jassa Singh Ahluwalia? So we talked about Nawab Kapoor Singh, but not in its entirety. So Nawab Kapoor Singh is given this title called Nawab. It's given that title by the Mughals.
I was going to say that's a Muslim Islamic
absolutely
like a royal status, isn't it?
Absolutely. And he was given a jagir. Akali Darbara Singh had passed up this because he said he didn't want anything from the Mughals, but the Sikhs felt that someone of note should have it, and it was Nawab Kapoor Singh. So we had a Nawab in the 18th century, and then he tutored and actually nourished an individual called Jassa Singh. Okay, Jassa Singh Ahluwalia would become something which is referred to as Sultan ul-Qawm, okay, which means king of the nation. Okay.
Ooh, wow.
So we had a king in the 18th century who led the Sikhs for around about 40 years. And he was a commander of chief of a Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal as well. And he was a strategist individual who was able to coordinate all the different armies. He was responsible for the city of Akal Takht Sahib as well. He made sure that it was rebuilt after Ahmed Shah Abdali on numerous occasions had actually, brought down the Harmandir Sahib to its knees effectively. So therefore, individuals like Jassa Singh Ahluwalia are also forgotten about as well. We do not hear enough of this individual. It's always skipped, like I've said, we get from Banda Singh Bahadur to Maharaja Ranjit Singh. But the actual Gurbani of Jassa Singh Ahluwalia through the Vada Gulugara and all the conquest of Sindh and the takeover of Delhi is all to do with Jassa Singh Ahluwalia.
Wow. And he fought alongside 𝐷𝐵𝐾 Singh as well, didn't he?
Absolutely. So 𝐷𝐵𝐾 Singh was subordinate to Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, and therefore the conquest of Delhi was these two individuals. There's others as well, but it was more to do with them. They'd actually started off the whole strategy from the river Jamna and going all the way. They went to Awadh first. They didn't go straight to Delhi. They went to a place called Awadh. They attacked Awadh, and then coming back, they had coordinated with other armies of the Khalsa, and then they attacked Delhi. So it was very, very kind of coordinated. It was the fact that these missile leaders, they did have differences as well. Okay, so the Buddha Dal and the Tarna Dal did have differences amongst themselves, but it was up to Jassa Singh Ahluwalia to try and bring all of them together on one platform, especially when it came down to the threats of the Mughals and the Afghans as well.
So is that, would you say Maharaja Ranjit Singh's success would be because he brought all the missiles together?
To some extent, yes. To some extent, no. What had actually happened is towards the end of the 18th century, we have these missile leaders who are now very aging. Okay, some have passed away. Jassa Singh Ahluwalia passed away in 1783. Okay, we still have 𝐷𝐵𝐾 Singh living up into the early 1800s. We have Jassa Singh Ramgarhia still living up to the first couple of years of the 1800s, and so therefore the aging missile leaders, and to some extent their succession planning hasn't gone really well, if that makes sense. And they're very comfortable now as well. Some of the Sardars at the end of the 18th century are very comfortable. Some have gone into drinking and they're killing themselves over silly things, basically, and there's a little bit of internecine wars as well. So what that means is a young individual like Ranjit Singh is being guided by his mother-in-law by the name of 𝐶𝐷𝐻𝐾𝐿 from the Kanaya missile, his own mother as well. And we have this person also being kind of looking in and realizing that the missiles were very disparate, as much as they were together very disparate, and he felt, or he was kind of believed, he was led to believe that it had to come under one person. So whilst the missile leaders and their territories have kind of waned in terms of their success, he is on the rise, and he was able to do that because he stood up against another Durrani by the name of Zaman Shah. Okay, and he was kind of doing these last conquests at the end of the 18th century. So Ranjit Singh was able to secure successful kind of battles with him at a very young age, and therefore the other missile leaders were kind of pale in comparison now, and therefore that was his rise, and he was able to then take over Lahore and Amritsar as well. And I think it was that key battles which people forget about, because people look at Ranjit Singh in his post-success years. I look at Ranjit Singh in his early years.
Okay.
And that's the big difference. It was what led him to become such a great leader in the future. But it was this early success. And he realized his missile, Sakachakya missile, wasn't a very big missile by all means. The Bungi missile was so far superior in the territories which they conquered. But he was able to pick off the Bungi missiles territories, and he was able to lead on that success. He realized some of the missile leaders were aging, so he was able to absorb the territories from their successors who were much weaker. So therefore, he was in a great place to actually absorb the missile. There's a lot of states as well, like Patiala, Jind, Nabha, Khalsa, state of Khalsa, which is a Gloria Singh missile state. And these states did not join with Maharaja Ranjit Singh because they felt that they were being pressed to give up territory for no reason. So think of yourself as being a Raja, okay? So these missile leaders are Rajas. And then you have an up-and-coming upstart by the name of Ranjit Singh. They're like, well, why should we negotiate with this person? So reluctantly, or maybe for their benefit, they sided with the British, okay, in the early 1800s, because they felt that their territory wasn't going to get squeezed. Effectively, they were correct up until the point that they died. And then the British took over their territories based on concepts like doctrine of lapse, which means that if you don't have a male heir, we can take over. And because under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, it had already been, Punjab had already been partitioned, okay, with the Treaty of 1809, okay. So people say Punjab was annexed in 1849, but there was also this treaty in 1809, which gave the British a lot of territory in the Punjab areas, effectively. And so therefore, sometimes we've got to look at it with a lot of nuances as well. But effectively, what Maharaja Ranjit Singh, which the Sikh missiles couldn't do, was he gave Punjab stability. He gave more stability, he gave more lands which were kind of administered on their own basis as well. And there was a lot of money flowing into Punjab. So it became a very rich state very, very quickly.